We all know someone who drains the air from the room, someone who demands attention, who always needs to be right, who weaponizes charm. And maybe we've tried everything: confrontation, silence, even compliance, hoping something would change. But here's the truth. We can't fix what someone won't admit is broken. What we can do is hold up a mirror, gently, bravely, and with heart. And sometimes all it takes is one question. But before I give it to you, let me say this. This isn't a weapon. This isn't about exposing someone to embarrass them or win. It's about truth. It's about protecting your peace and creating space for real connection, if it's even possible. Here's the powerful question. What do you need from me right now to feel heard? That's it. It sounds simple, even kind, and it is, but don't be fooled. It's also deeply revealing. See, people who are capable of connection will hear this question and soften. They'll recognize your willingness to meet them halfway, and they'll lean in. But those who are driven by ego, entitlement, or manipulation, this question disrupts their pattern. It calls for vulnerability, and they don't know how to hold it. You might see them deflect or blame or twist it back on you. Why would you ask me that? Are you trying to psychoanalyze me? Or maybe silence, the kind that screams discomfort. And that's your moment of clarity. Not because they confessed to being narcissistic, not because you trapped them, but because their response showed you whether they value connection or control. This isn't about judging, it's about understanding. Narcissism is often rooted in profound shame. But that doesn't mean we allow ourselves to be mistreated in the name of compassion. We ask the question not to fix, but to see. From that clarity, we choose. Do I keep engaging? Do I need to set firmer boundaries? Or do I walk away with peace knowing I showed up with courage and kindness? Truth without empathy is cruelty, but empathy without boundaries is self-betrayal. So ask the question, listen closely, and trust what the answer reveals. When we hear the word narcissist, it's easy to jump straight to judgment. Images come to mind of manipulation, arrogance, gaslighting, and a relentless hunger for attention. We think of the harm done, the emotional exhaustion, the confusion, the chaos, and all of that is real. It matters, and it deserves validation. But here's the paradox. If we begin by condemning the narcissist, we close the door to understanding before we even knock. And if our goal is to create clarity, not just catharsis, we need to start from a place of grounded compassion. Compassion isn't permission. It's not about excusing destructive behavior or minimizing the pain it causes. It's about seeing the full picture, not just the performance. It's about recognizing that narcissistic behaviors, while harmful, are often rooted in profound, unacknowledged wounds. Most narcissists aren't proud, powerful people on the inside. They're deeply insecure, often shaped by early emotional neglect, conditional love, or a sense of invisibility in their most formative years. Somewhere along the line, they learned that worth is earned, not inherent, that love must be performed for, not received freely. So they build masks of perfection, control, superiority to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of being not enough. This doesn't mean we rescue them. It means we resist the urge to label them as monsters. Because once we do that, we dehumanize, and ironically, we give away our own power. When we respond with harshness, they get to paint us as the problem. But when we respond with calm clarity and compassion, they're left to face themselves. And that's where real exposure begins. Compassion grounds us. It keeps us steady. It's the difference between reacting from pain and responding from purpose. When we approach the narcissist in our lives, whether a parent, partner, boss, or friend, from this place, we create room for truth without cruelty. So before you ask the powerful question, before you try to spot the mask or understand the manipulation, take a breath and remember your power lies not in shaming, but in seeing clearly and kindly. That's how we begin to reclaim the space narcissism often steals, with boundaries wrapped in compassion and clarity held with courage. In moments of conflict, especially when dealing with someone who constantly shifts blame, rewrites reality, or deflects accountability, our instinct is often to confront, to lay out the facts, to demand answers, to expose the lies and inconsistencies, thinking that if we just show them how wrong they are, they'll finally get it. But here's the hard truth. Accusation rarely leads to revelation, especially with someone who thrives on control, who's skilled at dodging responsibility, and who sees vulnerability as a threat rather than a bridge. That's why curiosity is so powerful and so underrated. Curiosity doesn't look like weakness, it looks like presence. It sounds like, help me understand, can you walk me through what you meant? Or what was going through your mind when that happened? These aren't softball questions, these are invitations. And invitations require a level of emotional maturity to accept. With a healthy person, curiosity can deepen connection. With a narcissist, it disrupts the script. Because when you're curious, truly, calmly, non-reactively curious, you refuse to play the game. You don't meet manipulation with outrage or silence with guilt. Instead, you create a space where their intentions, inconsistencies, and avoidance have nowhere to hide. Why? Because curiosity makes them do something they don't often do, reflect. And this is where it gets really revealing. Someone who's grounded in self-awareness and mutual respect will engage with that curiosity. They'll pause, they might even reconsider. But someone who relies on control and ego will often get defensive, offended, or annoyed. They might accuse you of being manipulative, which is ironic, or they might pivot the conversation entirely to avoid. Curiosity is disarming, not because it's gentle, but because it demands honesty without demanding control. It says, I'm here, I'm listening, and I won't chase you, but I will stand firm in what I see. And most importantly, curiosity keeps you aligned with your own integrity. It keeps you from becoming the thing you're trying to protect yourself from, reactive, blaming, rigid. It allows you to hold someone accountable without holding hostility. It keeps you grounded in your values, even when someone else is spinning in theirs. So when in doubt, when the conversation feels twisted, when you're tempted to accuse, when you feel that rising tide of frustration, try this instead. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I need to understand here? And how can I ask with strength, not suspicion? That's the power of curiosity. It's the quiet force that exposes what accusation never could. The truth that can only emerge in the presence of calm courage. Sometimes we're looking for the moment, the one line, the one move, the one question that can pierce through the fog of manipulation, confusion, and defensiveness. We want something honest, disarming, something that doesn't escalate, but reveals. This is that question. What do you need from me right now to feel heard? It's deceptively simple, but make no mistake, it's powerful, not because it corners the other person, but because it asks for something narcissism can't easily give: vulnerability. Let's break it down. First, it centers emotional responsibility. You're not offering solutions, you're not offering agreement, you're not apologizing just to keep the peace. What you're offering is presence. You're saying, I'm willing to engage with you, but I need to know what you're really asking for. This question invites clarity, and in doing so, exposes intention. A healthy, emotionally available person might respond with something like, I need you to let me finish without interrupting, or I just want to know you understand where I'm coming from. That's a sign of someone who wants connection. But someone who's driven by ego, not empathy, often can't or won't answer this question directly. You may get a blank stare, sarcasm, deflection. They might respond with accusations. Are you asking that? Are you trying to turn this around on me? Or they may answer in ways that manipulate. I need you to admit that this is all your fault. I need you to stop being so dramatic. And just like that, you're no longer guessing. This question shines a light, not with a spotlight that burns, but with a lantern that gently asks, what are you really here for? Control or connection? But the deeper magic of this question is what it says about you. It says, I value clarity over chaos. I'm not here to attack you. I'm here to understand if understanding is possible. I'm willing to hold space, but I won't abandon myself to do it. That's a profound boundary, and it's all wrapped in one sentence. You're not asking this to be clever. You're asking it because it brings the truth into the room, not just about them, but about the relationship, because how someone responds to this question reveals the nature of the dynamic you're in. Does it feel safe, respectful, mutual? Or does it turn into a performance, a power play, or a personal attack? That answer tells you everything you need to know, not about who they pretend to be, but about whether they can meet you in a space of real reciprocal connection. So the next time you find yourself walking on eggshells, unsure how to respond or how to see through the fog, try this. Pause, stay grounded, and ask, what do you need from me right now to feel heard? Then listen, not just to the answer, but to what the answer reveals. When we ask someone, what do you need from me right now to feel heard, it's easy to focus solely on what they say, the words, the explanation, the justifications. But here's the truth. The most telling part of their response isn't always in their language. It's in everything around it. Words can lie, they can charm, they can manipulate, but body language, tone, timing, facial expressions, and emotional energy, those things tend to tell the real story. Because here's what we know, emotionally mature people respond with alignment. What they say matches how they say it. Their voice softens, their posture relaxes, their eyes meet yours with sincerity. They might not have the perfect answer, but they meet the moment with presence. But with someone who's emotionally manipulative or narcissistic, the dissonance shows up fast. You might hear them say something that sounds right, I just want to be understood, but their tone is sharp, sarcastic, or dismissive, or they may pause uncomfortably, not because they're thinking deeply, but because the question unsettles them. It strips away the usual tools, deflection, blame, emotional inflation, and asks for something real, vulnerability, intention, clarity. And that makes people who aren't anchored in self-awareness uncomfortable, sometimes even angry. So when you ask the question, watch more than you listen, do their shoulders tense up? Do they cross their arms, roll their eyes, or give a tight, forced smile? Do they launch into a monologue that subtly or not so subtly puts you on trial instead? Pay attention to the speed of their reply. A thoughtful pause can be a sign of someone digging for honesty. A quick defensive answer, especially one that flips the conversation back onto you, might signal avoidance or control. Watch how long they stay with the actual question. Do they acknowledge what you asked, or do they pivot immediately to what you're doing wrong, what you said yesterday, or how you always overreact? This is why staying calm is so important. If you ask the question and then get swept into their emotional spin, the moment is lost. But if you stay present, rooted and observant, their response gives you data, not to diagnose them, that's not your role, but to discern what's true. Remember, narcissism is often fueled by performance. These individuals are used to crafting a version of themselves that gets a desired outcome. Admiration, control, compliance. But the question you're asking pulls them off script. It doesn't reward the performance, it invites something real. And real is risky when you're hiding behind ego. So watch how they move in that moment. Do they move toward connection or away from it? Do they open up or shut down? Do they lean in with honesty or lash out with accusation? Because that response, that posture, that energy, it will tell you far more than the words alone. It will show you whether this is someone who can meet you in truth or someone who needs you to abandon yours in order to stay in the relationship. And that's the most important thing to know. The goal is never to catch someone in a lie. It's to see whether the space between you is a place where truth can actually live. So don't just hear their answer, witness their response. That's where clarity begins. There's a quiet strength in asking someone, what do you need from me right now to feel heard? But that strength doesn't come from the words alone. It comes from the boundaries behind the question. Without boundaries, even the most skillful communication can become a trap. A place where your empathy gets twisted, your clarity gets hijacked, and your peace becomes the price you pay for trying to keep the connection. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People think they're walls, cold, harsh, meant to push people away. But true boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges. They don't push people out, they protect what's sacred within us. They tell others, this is how I will be treated if we're going to be in relationship. This is where I end and you begin. And in moments where narcissistic energy is present, moments where the air feels tight with defensiveness, manipulation, or blame, your boundary becomes your backbone. When you ask a question like, what do you need from me right now to feel heard? What you're really doing is offering an invitation, not a surrender. It's an offer that says, I'm here, I am present, I'm listening, but only if this space remains respectful and honest. That's what makes this moment so powerful, because narcissists often thrive on blurred lines, emotional enmeshment, guilt-based connection, constant validation. They want you to merge with their needs, their perspective, their pain. And without a boundary, it's easy to lose yourself in that pull. but your question is the boundary. It places responsibility back in their hands. It says, if you want something from me, you need to name it. I won't assume, I won't guess, and I won't contort myself around unspoken expectations. And if you can't meet me with clarity, I will still stand in mine. That's strength. Boundaries are not the absence of love. They are the most loving thing we can bring into a complicated dynamic, because they don't just protect us, they reveal the shape of the relationship itself. They show us whether someone wants partnership or power. And here's the truth. When you start to live from your boundaries, some people will be offended, especially those who benefited from you not having any, especially those who expected you to twist, shrink, or smooth over every discomfort to keep the peace. But peace that requires your silence isn't peace, it's performance. And boundaries are what let you step off the stage and back into yourself. So in this moment, this brave, compassionate moment of asking a powerful question, let your boundary hold you. Let it say, I will not yell to be heard. I will not be guilted into abandoning my truth. I will not confuse manipulation with intimacy. And I will not trade my emotional well-being for someone else's comfort. Boundaries aren't just rules, they're values in action, and in this moment, they are your compass. They help you navigate not just what is happening, but who you're becoming in the face of it. And that's real power. Quiet, clear, unshakable. When we find the courage to ask a question like, what do you need from me right now to feel heard, especially in the presence of narcissistic patterns, it's tempting to hope for a breakthrough. We might quietly wish for the curtain to fall, the mask to slip, and the aha moment to unfold. The moment where the narcissist sees themselves clearly, owns the harm, apologizes with sincerity, and changes the story. And while that hope is human, it's also dangerous. Because narcissism at its core is about protection, not connection. It's a fragile ego wrapped in armor. And most people who operate from that space aren't waiting to be unmasked. They're working hard, consciously or unconsciously, to never be. So if you walk into that moment expecting a reveal, some dramatic confession, or instant transformation, you may end up heartbroken, not healed. You might walk away asking, why didn't they change? Why didn't they admit it? Why didn't this question work? But the truth is, it did work, just not in the way you thought. This process isn't about changing them. It's about seeing clearly. It's about insight, not revelation. Insight is the quiet noticing. It's watching how they deflect instead of respond. It's hearing their answer or their refusal to answer and realizing something you hadn't been willing to admit. It's observing the way they spin blame, twist empathy, or emotionally withdraw when you introduce healthy boundaries. Insight doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with stillness, with presence, with the soft voice inside you whispering, this is who they are showing you they are. Believe it. And here's the real shift. When we stop trying to expose someone and instead try to understand the dynamic, we reclaim our power. We're no longer caught in the exhausting cycle of trying to win an unwinnable game. We're not fighting for truth to be handed to us. We're standing in it already. You don't need their revelation to validate your reality. You don't need their confession to confirm your clarity. You don't need their agreement to set a boundary or walk away or stay with eyes wide open. And when you stop chasing the reveal, you start seeing the insights that were there all along, the